and welcome to ArtsAltoona Live. My name is Pam Snyder, the Executive Director of the Altoona Symphony Orchestra and a member of the ArtsAltoona Steering Committee. And today I'm here to talk to you about the upcoming Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror production by the Altoona Symphony Orchestra, happening Saturday, October 28th at the historic Mishler Theater at 7:30 p.m. I'm going to actually read a little bit about the film to you. Imagine Berlin, Germany, 1922. The war is over. A new democratic republic is trying itself out. Maimed veterans are everywhere in the streets, and war widows are trying to make ends meet. But there is also a spirit of experimentation in the air, an urge to make everything fresh and new. Into this tumultuous atmosphere, F.W. Murnau's film, Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror, a Dracula story, premieres. It practically invents the horror film genre. This Halloween, the Altoona Symphony Orchestra goes 1920s Berlin, and we replicate the early silent film experience with a screening of Nosferatu in the historic Mishler Theater, which was itself a movie screening house back in the day. We will screen the latest up-to-date version of Nosferatu, and we will accompany it with the original 1922 Hans Erdmann score. Now that's where this becomes very special, because a lot of people may have seen Nosferatu, but they have never, in the United States, seen it screened live with an orchestra performing the original score. Part of the reason that's true is because the score had actually been lost and ended up having to be slightly reconstructed when it was found again. And whenever the film was originally brought out, there was a lot of people that were really uncomfortable with it. So a lot of the film got burned, as well as the score. So whenever they were able to recover what was left, or some people had kind of taken it and ran to make sure that it wasn't completely destroyed, because it's a masterpiece, one of the top 10 horror films of all time. They were able to bring it back and recreate the little pieces of the score that were missing and make sure that we could produce it now with the original Hans Erdmann piece playing. So you don't want to miss this. We want you to come dressed in costume, be festive. There's going to be a fun reception afterwards, and you've got to come and you've got to check it out. Teresa Chung, our maestra, as well as Jutta and Tim Melbinger are going to give you a little bit more in-depth look at the upcoming concert. I hope you enjoy.
My name is Teresa Chung. I'm the music director and conductor for the Altoona Symphony. It is my great pleasure to have my two guests here, Jutta Lorentzen and Tim Melbinger, both from Penn State University in Altoona, to join me with this particular version of interview on Nosferatu.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being part of the project. You know, it's been ongoing. We've been planning on this for a long time, for an exciting collaborative project between Penn State University and also the Altoona Symphony. First of all, tell our audience what Nosferatu is.
Nosferatu is a 1922 film. It was made in Germany by a filmmaker named Murnau, and it's considered one of the marvels or gems of early film history. The name Nosferatu might not mean much to you, but you will know exactly what I'm talking about when I give you another title, because Murnau in the Nosferatu film really presents a remake or an adaptation of the very famous Dracula story. So instead of hearing Nosferatu, maybe if you hear Dracula, then you already know a lot about the film. And it's a very exciting adaptation. It is one that is very famous and that is really much revered, and it's very exciting to be able to bring that to Altoona, moreover to the live performance of the original 1922 score.
Wonderful. And then Tim, how does music come in play? You know, since you teach music at Penn State, and then obviously, you know, you've done a lot of collaboration with the Altoona Symphony. You have written music for us. And then can you tell us a little bit about why it is so special to have this particular type of music to be with this film?
Well, in 1922, they did not yet have the technology to record the sound as well as music and along with the action. So it was a silent film. Some silent films that just had people improvise at the piano or organ during the film in the Nickelodeon Theater. But this film is special because the German composer Hans Erdmann was hired to write orchestra music for the full length of the film, 94 minutes, and the music is wonderful.
Yeah. And the difficulty, obviously, is that the music somehow has to match the action on the stage, you know. And that's why for improvisation, it's easy. When one person is in control, they can watch the screen and see what's going on, and they kind of make adjustment very quickly. But there's practically no adjustment whatsoever if the music is written for a whole orchestra. And then how do we control that? How do we control the music to match the storyline and so forth?
Well, you have a 39-person orchestra for this version, and Erdmann and the people who did is it Boozy and Hawks, our publisher, have written explicit directions all over the music as to exactly what happens at what time on the screen, and that coordinates with a series of ideas that coordinate perfectly with the emotions.
I see. Very interesting. And then we talked about also the film was first premiered with the live orchestra, of course. You know, that's the official first version, the premiere of it, with a live orchestra at a zoological society somewhere.
Well, the film, one thing to say about it. So in 1922, the film had its premiere in Berlin, so in a very urban setting. It was very glamorous. Before the film even came out, there was lots of publicity. Maybe I should also mention that the last name of the actor who plays Dracula is Max Schreck, and anybody who knows any German knows that Schreck translates as fright. So he had this wonderful name, so his name was Max Fright. And the production company, which only managed one production in this very short life, but they really played up that name and played up that idea that this is a film about not just about horror, but about dread, and that even the lead actor has this very strange name, and there was even this slight suggestion that the lead actor might be a vampire himself. So you can see this is a big public relations campaign. The premiere happened in a very glamorous setting to this live orchestral performance, and this to be able to bring this to Altoona almost 100 years later, so exactly 95 years later, is an amazing moment for the experience of film, and especially for contemporary film audiences and students to experience film the way it was shown and perceived by audiences in the early days of film history.
Not only that, the most miraculous thing was that the music was actually lost. You know, at one point, there was a lawsuit going on, and the film was banned and pulled from public. But there are stray versions of it going around, and then the music was kind of disconnected. So we have this composer, you know, how did we get reconstructed, putting the music back with the film, as we know that we're doing here, the first US premiere of this particular version of film and this reconstructed music, put it back together to perform it as it were in the beginning of the premiere. So how did that come about, Tim?
It took people who really care about silent films to investigate everything Erdmann ever did, and then they found a suite of orchestra music called the Romantic Suite, and compared it to a description of the music in a book Erdmann wrote about everything he did and everything else people were doing at the time in silent film in Germany, and they were able to piece it back together with that music this version that we have today.
Right, that's exactly why when we started going into the project, we discovered all these connections and all these amazing things, you know, and not to mention the fact that we'll be performing at the Michelin Theater, which was once a silent movie house and a vaudeville house. And so it's very exciting also to do it during Halloween. One more question before we end here. We know that we're doing a big collaboration with Penn State. What else are we planning to do during the week of the whole horror production?
Right, the horror production, hopefully not, and hopefully yes. At Penn State, when I talked to my colleagues about this, they were very excited. Many people teach film, and they also teach early film. But it was also interesting to think about the idea of the vampire or the zombie, because the zombie or the vampire has a big presence in popular culture, but the zombie is always a figure between life and death, between the spirit and the body. And so we're trying to develop a series of lectures and other activities that deal with the ideas of what it means to be human, what does it mean to be alive, what does it mean to be dead or dying. And so we're taking a more kind of intellectual, philosophical approach. So one of the events that we have planned is a roundtable on the idea of the undead. And we will have colleagues from engineering talking about what it means to engineer with forces that are greater than life, which of course you easily get into. We have a colleague who is going to speak about poisonous plants. We have a colleague who is a specialist in dance, and she will report on dance workshops with terminally ill patients. So that's a very far interpretation of this theme of life and death that we're trying to deal with here. And I have another colleague who is an expert in early English literature, and she tells me that this whole idea of life and death is very different in early English literature. So for example, she said a body in the grave is still considered, or was still considered alive if there was the tiniest speck of flesh on the bone. Only with the vanishing of that speck of flesh was that body really dead. So there are interesting ideas about life and death, what does it mean to be human, that we are trying to engage. And we have Tim's pre-concert lecture, the night of the performance. Then we are also working with the local high school, so we're going to speak to students there, and they are hopefully coming to see the performance. Yeah, I think this is maybe a good summary of where
and
we
Tim,
have.
talk a little bit about what we can expect when we come to the pre-concert lecture before the performance of the piece.
Well, this is not a film that people see too often. It is shown on TCM every once in a while, and the nice young man speaks for 2 minutes, and then they play the film.
Okay.
But I will speak a little bit about not only the history of silent film in the Mishler Theater and in Altoona in general, but a little bit more about Murnau and his beautiful film, and then a little bit about Erdmann and the themes he wrote. We can actually hear a theme for Nosferatu, and for a love theme, and a theme for the castle and terror and other ideas. Follow the characters throughout the film, much like Wagner would have done in his operas.
Wonderful. And it's almost like a leitmotif,
Yes,
for all the
exactly.
characters here. So we are having this wonderful production of Nosferatu of the Altoona Symphony on October the 28th, Saturday at 7:30 at the Mishler Theater. We hope to see everybody here. And this ends our interview of Nosferatu.